Part 1. The unlikely guardian. Jake Chen adjusted his combat armor one more time as he looked out at the most beautiful planet he had ever seen. Zephyr Prime stretched before him like something from a dream. The entire world seemed to be made of living crystal that caught the light of 3 suns and threw rainbows across purple skies. Cities floated in the air, connected by bridges of pure energy that sparkled like diamonds. "Stop staring, Marine," said Colonel Hayes, walking up beside him. "We're not here for sightseeing." Jake nodded and straightened his shoulders. "Yes, sir. It's just, I never thought I'd see anything like this." "None of us did," Hayes admitted, his voice softer now. "The Zephyrians are unlike any alien race we've ever met. They're peaceful, smart, and they want to share their technology with us. All we have to do is keep them safe from the Korthak raiders." Jake had heard about the Korthak. They were savage aliens who traveled the galaxy, destroying everything they found. They took what they wanted and killed the rest. The Zephyrians, for all their advanced technology, had never learned to fight. They were like brilliant children who had never known violence. That's why humanity was here. Earth's Marines would protect the Zephyrians, and in return, the crystal beings would share their energy manipulation technology. It was the deal of the century. The transport ship landed with a soft hum in the middle of Zephyr Prime's capital city. Jake followed his squad out onto the landing platform and gasped, despite himself. Everything around him was alive with light. The buildings pulsed gently like sleeping giants, and streams of energy flowed through transparent tubes above their heads. But what really caught Jake's attention were the Zephyrians themselves. They were tall and graceful, with skin that looked like polished crystal. Their faces were almost human, but their eyes were large pools of swirling color. Most amazing of all were their wings. Each Zephyrian had 4 butterfly-like wings that shimmered with patterns of light that changed based on their emotions. "Welcome, humans," said a Zephyrian who approached them. Her wings showed gentle blue patterns that Jake somehow knew meant happiness. "I am High Counselor Velnara. We are honored by your presence." Colonel Hayes stepped forward and saluted. "The honor is ours, Counselor. We're here to serve and protect." Velnara's wing patterns shifted to warm gold. "Come. The ceremony begins soon. Our people are excited to meet the brave warriors of Earth." As they walked through the Crystal City, Jake tried not to stare at everything around him. Zephyrian children played in parks where the grass glowed softly under their feet. Artists shaped sculptures from pure light that danced in the air. Musicians played instruments that created visible music, streams of color that flowed like rivers through the sky. "It's like a fairy tale," whispered Private Martinez, walking beside Jake. "A fairy tale that needs protecting," Jake replied. He couldn't imagine these peaceful beings facing the brutal Korthak. It would be like wolves attacking butterflies. They reached the grand amphitheater, a massive dome made entirely of crystal that rose high into the sky. Inside, thousands of Zephyrians had gathered. Their wings created a sea of shifting colors that took Jake's breath away. "The ceremony will show the bond between our peoples," Velnara explained. "Our young ones will demonstrate their gifts, and your people will show us the courage that makes humanity famous across the galaxy." Jake wasn't sure about being famous for courage, but he nodded anyway. The ceremony began with young Zephyrians, floating into the center of the amphitheater. They moved their hands and shaped energy into beautiful forms, flowers that bloomed and wilted, birds that flew in circles, and geometric patterns that danced in perfect harmony. The crowd's wings rippled with appreciation, showing waves of purple and green. Then Jake noticed her. She was younger than the others, maybe just past childhood by Zephyrian standards. Her wings were smaller and showed nervous yellow patterns, instead of the confident blues and purples of her companions. When it was her turn to perform, she raised her hands, but nothing happened. The crowd's wings shifted to disappointed gray. The young Zephyrian tried again, her wings now showing bright red embarrassment. A small spark of energy appeared, then faded immediately. Jake felt sorry for her. He remembered being young and failing in front of everyone. It was one of the worst feelings in the world. Suddenly, alarms began screaming throughout the city. The crystal dome above them cracked as something massive struck it from outside. Through the crack, Jake could see dark ships descending from the sky like angry thunderclouds. "Korthak!" someone screamed. The Zephyrians panicked immediately. Their wings flashed bright white with terror as they scattered in all directions. These people had never faced violence. They didn't know what to do. But Jake knew exactly what to do. "Martinez, Rodriguez, get the civilians to the emergency shelters," he shouted over the chaos. "Thompson, call for backup." The crystal dome shattered completely as Korthak fighters roared through the opening. They were ugly ships, all sharp edges and weapon ports, designed only for destruction. Plasma bolts began raining down on the crowd. Jake pulled out his pulse rifle and started returning fire, but there were too many enemies. A Korthak blast hit a support pillar, and a massive chunk of crystal broke free, falling toward the crowd. That's when Jake saw her again. The young Zephyrian girl was standing frozen in the middle of the chaos. Her wings showed pure white terror, and she couldn't move as the huge piece of crystal fell straight toward her. Jake didn't think. He just ran. His combat boots pounded against the crystal floor as he sprinted across the amphitheater. Zephyrians dove out of his way, their wings flashing with alarm. The falling crystal was the size of a small building, and it was moving fast. Jake reached the girl just as the crystal chunk crashed down. He tackled her, wrapping his arms around her fragile body and rolling both of them toward what little cover he could find. But there wasn't enough time. The crystal hit the ground and exploded into sharp fragments that flew in every direction. Jake felt them slam into his armor like hammers. His shields flared and overloaded. Pain shot through his back and legs as pieces found gaps in his protection. More Korthak fighters screamed overhead, their weapons turning the beautiful amphitheater into a war zone. Jake saw a blast heading straight for where he and the girl lay among the crystal debris. Again, he didn't think. He just acted. Jake threw himself on top of the Zephyrian girl as the plasma bolt hit. His armor absorbed most of the energy, but not all of it. Pain exploded through his chest as the blast burned through his protective systems. He could smell his own flesh cooking. Another blast hit, then another. Jake's armor was failing, but he didn't move. The girl beneath him was so small, so fragile. Her wings were pressed against his chest, and he could feel them trembling like captured butterflies. "Stay down," he gasped, his voice distorted by his damaged helmet speakers. "I've got you." A fourth plasma blast struck his back. This time, his armor gave up completely. The energy tore through him like fire, and he felt his strength leaving with his blood, but he didn't let go of the girl. As darkness closed in around him, Jake felt something strange. The Zephyrian's wings were still pressed against his chest, but they weren't trembling anymore. They were warm, really warm, and getting warmer. Light began to seep through his closing eyelids. Not the harsh light of plasma weapons, but something soft and gentle. The girl's wings weren't just warm now, they were glowing. The light grew brighter and brighter until Jake could see it even with his eyes closed. It felt like sunlight and safety and hope all mixed together. The pain in his chest began to fade, replaced by a tingling sensation that spread through his whole body. "What?" he started to say, but the words wouldn't come. The Zephyrian girl was changing. Her small wings were growing larger, and the patterns on them weren't the simple colors he'd seen before. Now they showed complex designs that seemed to move and flow like living things. And strangest of all, the patterns matched the rhythm of his heartbeat. Jake tried to stay conscious, tried to understand what was happening, but the darkness was too strong. As he slipped away, he heard the girl whisper something in her own language. He didn't understand the words, but somehow he knew what they meant. "Thank you." Then everything went black. But even in the darkness, Jake could still feel the warmth of her wings, and somehow he knew that something had changed forever. Something important. Something that would matter more than he could possibly imagine. Above them, the battle raged on, but in their small space among the crystal ruins. Human. Courage had touched alien grace, and neither would ever be the same again. Part 2. The Resonance Discovery. Jake woke up to the sound of soft humming. His eyes opened slowly, and the first thing he noticed was that he wasn't dead. That was surprising, because he clearly remembered being shot full of holes by Korthak plasma weapons. The second thing he noticed was that everything around him was glowing with a gentle blue light. He was lying on something that felt like a bed, but it was made of crystal that somehow managed to be both hard and comfortable at the same time. The walls around him curved upward in smooth arcs, and streams of light flowed through them like liquid starlight. "You are awake," said a soft voice. Jake turned his head and saw the Zephyrian girl sitting beside his bed. She looked different now. Her wings were larger than before, and instead of the simple colors he remembered, they showed complex patterns that seemed to move and shift like living art. The strangest part was that the patterns pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. "Are you okay?" Jake asked, his voice coming out as a rough whisper. His throat felt like sandpaper. The girl's wings shifted to warm gold patterns. "I should ask you that question. You nearly died protecting me." Jake tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain shot through his chest and back. "How long was I out?" 3 days, said another voice. An older Zephyrian entered the room, his wings showing calm blue and silver patterns. "I am Dr. Veltar. I have been caring for you." 3 days? Jake looked down at himself. His combat armor was gone, replaced by some kind of soft white clothing. But he could see bandages underneath, and when he moved, he could feel the deep aches where the plasma blasts had hit him. "You should not be alive," Dr. Veltar said, walking over to check on some glowing instruments beside Jake's bed. "The injuries you sustained were fatal. Your heart stopped twice during the first night." Jake looked at the young Zephyrian girl. "What's your name?" Her wings shifted to shy purple. "I am called Lyra, and I owe you my life." "You don't owe me anything," Jake said. "I just did what anyone would do." Both Zephyrian's wings flashed with surprise. Dr. Veltar shook his head. "No, human Jake. You did what no one else could do. What you did was impossible." "What do you mean?" Dr. Veltar gestured to Lyra. "Show him." Lyra stood up and held out her hand. Light began to gather in her palm, but this wasn't the weak spark Jake had seen during the ceremony. This was a ball of pure energy that made the air around it shimmer with power. She closed her hand, and the energy formed into a butterfly made of light that flew around the room before landing on Jake's shoulder. "I could never do this before," Lyra said softly. "I was the weakest in my class. My energy manipulation was so poor that some thought I might not be a true Zephyrian." Jake stared at the energy butterfly on his shoulder. It felt warm and somehow alive. "What changed?" "You did," Dr. Veltar said. "When you sacrificed yourself to save Lyra, something happened that we have never seen before. Your life force became connected to hers." "I don't understand." Dr. Veltar pulled up a chair and sat down. His wings, showing the slow, thoughtful patterns that Jake was learning, meant concentration. "We Zephyrians manipulate energy through our connection to the quantum field that surrounds all living things," the doctor explained. "It is something we are born with, like you humans are born with the ability to see or hear. But Lyra was born with a very weak connection." "Okay," Jake said, still not understanding. "When you threw yourself over her, when you were willing to die to protect her, your human life force created a bridge between your consciousness and hers. Now you are connected. When your emotions are strong, her power grows. When she uses her abilities, your human awareness expands." To demonstrate, Lyra closed her eyes and held out both hands. Jake suddenly felt his senses explode outward. He could hear conversations happening in other parts of the building. He could feel the movement of people walking on floors above and below. His vision became so sharp that he could see individual particles of dust floating in the air. "Whoa," Jake gasped, and the sensation faded as Lyra lowered her hands. "The connection works both ways," Dr. Veltar continued. "Your human courage and determination flow into her, giving her abilities she never had. Her Zephyrian energy sensitivity flows into you, giving you awareness beyond any human." Jake looked at Lyra, who was studying her hands with wonder. "Is this permanent?" "We do not know," the doctor admitted. "Nothing like this has ever happened before. No alien species has ever achieved resonance with Zephyrian bioenergy. We are learning as we go." Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the medical facility. Jake tried to jump up, but Lyra gently pushed him back down. "The Korthak. she said, her wings flashing red with anger. They have surrounded our world. They demand we surrender our energy manipulation technology, or they will destroy every city. Jake felt his heart rate spike, and immediately Lyra's wings began glowing brighter. The energy butterfly on his shoulder grew larger and started radiating heat. "How long do we have?" Jake asked. Dr. Veltar's wings showed dark purple, which Jake somehow knew meant fear. "Perhaps a day, maybe less. Our planetary shields are strong, but the Korthak have weapons we have never seen before, dark weapons that seem to eat light itself." Jake finally managed to sit up despite the pain. "What about my unit? The other Marines?" "Most survived the attack on the amphitheater," Lyra said. "But they are just a few dozen soldiers against a fleet of thousands. They are brave, but—" She didn't need to finish. Jake understood. Humanity's weapons were advanced by Earth standards, but the Korthak had been conquering planets for centuries. They had bigger ships, more powerful weapons, and no mercy. "There has to be something we can do," Jake said. Dr. Veltar and Lyra exchanged a look that Jake didn't like. "There is something," the doctor said slowly. "But it is dangerous. Perhaps impossible. Tell me." "The connection between you and Lyra is unlike anything in our history," Dr. Veltar explained. "But our history is long, and there are stories. Legends about a time when Zephyrians could do more than just manipulate small amounts of energy." Lyra's wings shifted to uncertain yellow. "The old songs speak of warriors who could shape the very fabric of space, who could create weapons from pure thought, who could what?" Jake pressed. "Who could fight?" she whispered. "Long ago, before we chose the path of peace, Zephyrians were warriors. We had to be, to survive in a violent galaxy. But we gave up that power because it nearly destroyed us." Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. "You're saying your people used to be fighters?" "The greatest fighters the galaxy had ever seen," Dr. Veltar confirmed. "But the power corrupted us. We became as brutal as the enemies we fought. So our ancestors made a choice. They changed our genetics, suppressed the warrior abilities, and chose to become scholars and artists instead. But those abilities are still there," Jake said, understanding dawning. "Hidden in your genes." "Yes. And somehow your human influence is awakening them in Lyra." The doctor's wings showed complex patterns that Jake couldn't read. "She is becoming something that has not existed for 1,000 years. A battle singer." Jake looked at Lyra, who was staring at her hands again. The energy butterfly on his shoulder had grown even larger and was now the size of his fist. "Is that why you're scared?" he asked. "The High Council is very concerned," Dr. Veltar admitted. "They fear that if other young Zephyrians learn what has happened to Lyra, they might seek similar connections with your people. They worry that the warrior nature might spread, bringing back the violence we worked so hard to leave behind. But without that power, you can't fight the Korthak," Jake pointed out. "Exactly," Lyra said, her wings flashing through rapid patterns of blue and gold and red. "We have a choice. We can remain peaceful and die, or we can remember how to fight and risk becoming monsters again." Jake felt his determination rising, and immediately the energy butterfly on his shoulder burst into brilliant light. Around the room, other objects began to glow in response. "There's a third option," he said. "What?" both Zephyrians asked. "We learn to fight together, humans and Zephyrians. Your people gave up violence because you didn't know how to control it. But humans have been controlling violence for thousands of years. We know how to be warriors without becoming monsters." Lyra's wings shifted to patterns Jake had never seen before, complex spirals of gold and silver that seemed to reach toward him. "You would teach us?" she asked. "If it means saving your people, yes." Dr. Veltar stood up, his wings showing rapid, nervous patterns. "The Council will not approve. They have already voted to separate you from Lyra. They believe you are corrupting her, awakening things that should stay sleeping." Jake felt anger surge through him, and every light in the room flared brighter. "When?" "Tomorrow," the doctor said quietly. "They plan to take you back to your people and send you away from our world." Jake looked at Lyra, whose wings were now showing determined red patterns. "How do you feel about that?" She smiled, and for the first time, Jake saw something fierce in her large, colorful eyes. "I think the Council is about to learn that some things, once awakened, do not go back to sleep easily." As if responding to her words, the energy butterfly on Jake's shoulder suddenly exploded into a dozen smaller butterflies that filled the room with dancing light. Outside, the alarms continued to wail as the Korthak fleet tightened its grip around the Part 3. The forbidden power. Jake didn't wait for the Council to come for him. Early the next morning, while the medical facility was quiet, he slipped out of his room. His body still ached from the plasma burns, but the strange energy connection with Lyra had helped him heal faster than any human should. He found Lyra in a small garden behind the building, sitting beside a pool of water that glowed with soft light. Her wings were folded against her back, showing sad blue patterns. "You're leaving, aren't you?" she asked without looking up. "The Council wants me gone," Jake said, sitting down beside her. "But that doesn't mean I have to go quietly." Lyra finally looked at him, her large eyes reflecting the glowing water. "Dr. Veltar told me what they decided. They think you're dangerous. They think I'm becoming something unnatural." Jake felt anger rise in his chest, and immediately the water in the pool began to ripple. Lyra's wings shifted to brighter patterns as his emotions fed into her power. "Maybe I am dangerous to them," Jake said, "but not to you, never to you." "Show me," Lyra said suddenly. "What? Show me how to fight. If we only have a little time before they separate us, teach me what humans know about controlling violence." Kill studied her face. "Are you sure? Once you learn, you can't unlearn it." "I'm sure." Her wings flashed with determined gold patterns. "My people are going to die if we don't fight back. I'd rather become a monster than watch everyone I love get killed." "You won't become a monster," Jake promised. "That's the whole point. Humans learned long ago that the best warriors are the ones who hate violence but will use it to protect others." For the next several hours, Jake taught Lyra everything he knew about combat. Not just the physical parts, but the mental discipline that kept soldiers human even in war. He showed her how to channel anger without letting it control her, how to be ruthless against enemies while staying gentle with friends. And as he taught, her strange things began to happen. When Jake demonstrated a punch, Lyra didn't just copy the movement. She created a fist of pure energy that shattered a crystal boulder 20 feet away. When he showed her how to dodge and weave, she learned to phase through solid objects, becoming like light itself. But the most amazing thing was what happened to Jake when Lyra used her powers. Every time she channeled energy, his human senses expanded beyond anything he had thought possible. He could hear heartbeats from across the city. He could see the flow of energy through the planet itself. He could feel the emotions of every Zephyrian within miles. "This is incredible," Jake gasped after one particularly intense training session. "Is this what it's like to be Zephyrian?" "No," Lyra said, her wings showing confused purple patterns. "This is something new. Something that has never existed before." That's when Jake felt it. A presence in his expanded awareness, ancient and vast. When he turned toward it, he saw an elderly Zephyrian approaching them. But this one was different. His wings showed patterns that seemed to contain entire galaxies, and his eyes held depths that spoke of incredible age. "Keeper Zaltek," Lyra whispered, her wings immediately shifting to respectful silver. "Young battle singer," the ancient Zephyrian said, his voice like wind through crystal caves. "And the human who awakened what should have remained sleeping." Jake stood up, ready to defend himself, but the keeper raised a hand. "Peace, warrior Jake. I am not here to stop you. I am here to warn you." "Warn us about what?" Lyra asked. Keeper Zaltek gestured, and the air around them shimmered. Suddenly, they were surrounded by images from the past. Jake saw Zephyrians in battle, but these weren't the peaceful crystal beings he knew. These were creatures of terrible beauty. Their wings spread wide as they wielded energy like weapons of mass destruction. "Long ago, we were not artists and scholars," the keeper said. We were the Burning Wing Legion, the most feared warriors in the galaxy. We could reshape matter with thought, travel between stars without ships, and destroy entire fleets with our battle songs. The images showed Zephyrian battle singers working together, their combined powers creating weapons that could crack planets. Jake saw them fighting horrible creatures from the dark between stars, protecting peaceful worlds from things that nightmares were made of. You were heroes, Jake said. At first, Keeper Zalthek agreed, but power without wisdom breeds corruption. As we grew stronger, we began to see other species as lesser beings. We conquered where we once protected. We enslaved where we once freed. The images changed, showing Zephyrian armies burning worlds, forcing alien populations to serve them, becoming the very evil they had once fought against. We nearly destroyed ourselves and took the galaxy with us, the Keeper continued. So our greatest leader made the ultimate sacrifice. She used a battle song of such power that it rewrote our very genes, suppressing the warrior abilities and making us into what we are today. But now it's coming back, Lyra said, looking at her hands. Because of Jake. Yes. The human's influence is awakening your dormant gifts. You are becoming the first battle singer in 1,000 years. The Keeper's ancient eyes fixed on Jake. But there is something more. Something we did not expect. What? Jake asked. You are not just awakening her abilities. You are becoming part of them. The connection between you is deeper than we realized. The Keeper gestured again, and Jake saw an image of himself and Lyra surrounded by swirling energy. You are becoming a hybrid consciousness, part human determination, part Zephyrian power. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. What does that mean? It means you may be able to do what we could not, the Keeper said. Control the power without losing yourselves to it. Your human nature provides the balance our ancestors lacked. But the Council doesn't see it that way, Lyra said bitterly. The Council is afraid, Keeper Zalthek admitted. They remember the stories. They know what battle singers became before. They would rather die as innocents than live as potential monsters. Suddenly, alarms began screaming across the city. All three of them looked up to see the sky darkening above them. Massive Korthak ships were descending through the planetary shields like hot knives through ice. Void cannons, the Keeper whispered, his wings showing pure white terror. They have weapons that can eat our energy shields. Jake watched in horror as the beautiful crystal cities began to burn. Korthak fighters swarmed through the air, their plasma weapons turning everything they touched into smoking ruins. In the distance, he could see Zephyrians running in panic, their wings flashing with fear as they scattered like frightened birds. How many people are going to die? Jake asked. Everyone, Lyra said quietly. Every Zephyrian on the planet. The Korthak don't take prisoners. Jake felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. He looked at Lyra, then at the ancient Keeper. Teach us, he said. What? Both Zephyrians asked. Teach us the battle songs. Show us how to fight like your ancestors did. If the choice is between becoming monsters or watching everyone die, I choose monsters. Jake, no, Lyra said, her wings showing frightened yellow. You don't understand the power. It changes you. It makes you want to hurt people, to dominate them. Maybe it changed pure Zephyrians, Jake said. But I'm not pure anything, I'm human. We've been dealing with violent urges since we crawled out of caves. We know how to be savage when we need to be and gentle when the fighting's done. Brewer. Zalthek stared at him for a long moment. Around them, the sounds of battle grew closer as Korthak forces swept through the city. You would risk everything? The ancient Zephyrian asked. Your humanity, your soul, your very identity? Jake looked at Lyra, whose wings were now showing rapid patterns of fear and hope and determination all mixed together. I already risked everything for her, he said simply. What's a little more? The Keeper closed his eyes, and Jake could feel the weight of centuries pressing down on them. When the ancient being opened his eyes again, they were filled with starlight. Very well. But know this, human Jake. Once you learn the battle songs, once you taste the power of creation and destruction, you cannot go back. You will be changed, forever. We're already changed, Lyra said. her wings settling into steady patterns of gold and silver. The question is whether we'll use that change to save people or watch them die. The keeper nodded slowly. Then let us begin. But first, you must understand what you are truly asking for. The battle songs are not just weapons. They are a way of becoming one with the fundamental forces of the universe. To sing them, you must be willing to let go of everything you think you are and become something larger. Jake felt Lyra's hand slip into his. Her wings were now showing the complex spiral patterns he had come to associate with their connection. "We're ready," they said together. As if responding to their words, energy began to gather around them. The ancient keeper raised his wings, and for the first time in 1,000 years, the sound of a true battle song began to echo across Zephyr Prime. But this song was different from those of the past. It carried not just the fury of ancient warriors, but the protective love of a human soldier, and the gentle determination of a young Zephyrian who had learned that sometimes the greatest act of love is the willingness to fight. Above them, the Korthak ships continued their assault, not knowing that they had just awakened something that would change the galaxy forever. Part 4. The Last Stand. The battle song that Keeper Zalthek taught them was unlike anything Jake had ever experienced. It wasn't just music, it was a way of touching the very fabric of reality itself. As the ancient melodies flowed through his mind, Jake felt his consciousness expand beyond his human body. He could feel the quantum threads that connected all matter, see the energy patterns that held the universe together. But more than that, he could change them. Lyra's transformation was even more dramatic. Her small wings had grown to twice their normal size, and the patterns on them now showed designs that seemed to contain entire star systems. When she sang the battle songs, the air around her rippled like water, and objects began to orbit her body as if she had become a tiny planet. "Enough theory," Jake said as another explosion shook the city around them. "People are dying out there." Keeper Zalthek nodded grimly. "Then let us see what you have learned." They emerged from the hidden training chamber to find the capital, city in ruins. The beautiful crystal spires were cracked and burning. Korthak fighters screamed through the air, their weapons turning everything below them into smoking craters. In the distance, Jake could see the massive shapes of Korthak battleships, descending like hungry predators. "Where are my people?" Jake asked, looking for any sign of the human Marines. "The survivors have retreated to the military command center," Zalthek said. "But they are trapped. The Korthak have surrounded them." Jake felt anger rise in his chest, but this time it was different. Instead of just making him want to hit something, the anger became a tool. He could feel it feeding into the battle song, giving it power and direction. "Show me," he said. Lyra closed her eyes and spread her wings. Jake felt their connection activate, and suddenly he could see through her enhanced senses. Miles away, he spotted the command center, a fortress of crystal and metal that was under heavy attack. Korthak ground forces had surrounded it, and their weapons were slowly eating through the shields. Inside, Jake could see the heat signatures of about 30 humans and 100 Zephyrians. They were running out of ammunition and power. They had maybe an hour before the shields failed completely. "We have to help them," Jake said. "The three of us against an entire army?" Zalthek asked. "Even battle singers have limits." "Then we don't fight the army," Jake said, his tactical training kicking in. "We fight the ships, cut off the head, and the body dies." He pointed up at the largest Korthak battleship, a massive black vessel that hung in the sky like a metal mountain. "That's their command ship. If we can take it out, the rest will lose coordination." Lyra's wings shifted to excited gold patterns. "You want to attack a battleship? With just the three of us?" "Not attack," Jake corrected. "Infiltrate. Get inside, find their leader, and end this." Keeper Zalthek stared at him for a long moment. "You truly think like a warrior." "Very well. But know that once we begin this path, there will be no mercy. From the enemy, they will try to kill us all." "Good," Jake said, feeling the battle song humming in his blood. "I'm in the mood to disappoint them." What followed was unlike any battle Jake had ever imagined. Lyra sang them into the sky, her voice, creating platforms of solid energy that could carry all three of them. As they rose toward the Korthak ships, enemy fighters swarmed toward them like angry wasps. But Jake and Lyra were no longer just human and Zephyrian. They were something new, something the Korthak had never faced before. When plasma bolts came at them, Jake's enhanced reflexes let him see them in slow motion. He would point and Lyra would create shields of crystallized space that turned the energy weapons aside. When fighters got too close, Lyra would sing a note that made their engines simply stop working, sending them tumbling out of the sky. Keeper Zalthek fought like a living legend. His battle song created weapons from pure thought, energy spears that could punch through ship armor, nets of force that could catch entire fighter squadrons, and waves of power that knocked enemy pilots unconscious without killing them. "You're holding back," Jake realized as they approached the command ship. I'm choosing not to become what I once was," the ancient Zephyrian replied. "There is a difference between fighting to protect and fighting to destroy." The command ship was huge up close, easily the size of a city block. Its black hull was covered with weapon ports and shield generators, and Jake could see Korthak soldiers moving behind transparent sections. "How do we get inside?" Lyra asked. Jake studied the ship for a moment, then smiled. "We don't break in, we get invited." He reached out through his connection with Lyra and touched her energy manipulation abilities. Together they created something that had never existed before, a perfect hologram of a damaged Korthak fighter. To any sensor, they looked like a crippled enemy ship requesting permission to land. The command ship's landing bay opened, and they flew inside. The moment they touched down, Jake knew they were in trouble. Hundreds of Korthak soldiers were waiting for them. These weren't the mindless brutes Jake had expected. They were disciplined, well-armed, and smart enough to have seen through the deception. "Welcome, humans and Zephyrian," said a voice from the shadows. A massive Korthak stepped forward, easily 8 feet tall and covered in scars. His armor was black metal decorated with the bones of his enemies. "I am Warlord Greztok. I have been looking forward to meeting the ones who killed so many of my fighters." "Greztok," Keeper Zaltek whispered. "The destroyer of worlds. He has conquered 50 systems. 51 after today," the warlord corrected. "Your little light show was impressive, but this ship has shields that can stop Battlesinger attacks. You are trapped." Jake looked around the landing bay. There were easily 300 Korthak soldiers, all with weapons pointed at them. The walls were covered with some kind of black metal that seemed to absorb light. "Void steel," Greztok explained, seeing Jake's expression. "It eats energy. Your Zephyrian tricks won't work here." "Maybe not," Jake admitted, "but you made one mistake." "What mistake?" Jake smiled, and for the first time since learning the battle songs, he let his human nature completely take control. "You assumed we came here to fight you." Lyra's eyes widened as she felt his intentions through their connection. Keeper Zalthek's wings flashed with alarm. "Jake, what are you doing?" Lyra whispered. "Something crazy," Jake replied. Then louder he called out to Greztok, "I challenge you to single combat." The landing bay fell silent. Even the Korthak soldiers looked surprised. Greztok's scarred face split into a grin that showed far too many teeth. "Single combat? You, a soft human, against me?" "That's right. If I win, you call off the attack and leave this system. If you win, we surrender and you can do whatever you want with us." "Jake, no," Lyra said, her wings showing panicked red patterns. "He's 3 times your size and has been fighting for centuries." "I know," Jake said quietly. "Trust me." Greztok laughed, a sound like breaking metal. "I accept, but know that I will not make your death quick, human. I will make you scream for the entertainment of my soldiers." As the Korthak formed a circle around them, Jake reached out through his connection with Lyra one more time, but instead of drawing on her power, he did something else. He shared his plan. Lyra's wings went from panicked red to understanding gold. Keeper Zalthek's ancient eyes widened as he felt the echo of Jake's thoughts. "You would sacrifice yourself." "Again," the Keeper said. If it saves everyone else, yes, Jake replied. That's what humans do. We're really good at necessary sacrifices. Grezatok drew a massive energy sword that crackled with dark power. Enough talking. Let us begin. As the warlord charged toward him, Jake felt the battle song rise in his mind, one final time. But this song was different from what Zelthek had taught them. This was purely human, a song of sacrifice, of love, of the willingness to give everything for others. And as Grezatok's blade came down toward his head, Jake smiled and did exactly what Lyra expected him to do. He let the warlord kill him, but dying was only the first part of his plan. The moment Jake's heart stopped, Lyra screamed. It wasn't a human scream or even a normal Zephyrian cry. It was a battle song of pure rage and love and loss, amplified by every lesson Jake had taught her about controlled violence. The void steel walls cracked. The ship's lights flickered, and every Korthak soldier in the landing bay suddenly understood that they had made a terrible mistake. Because Jake hadn't come here to fight Greztok. He had come here to give Lyra a reason to stop holding back, and as her battle song reached its crescendo, reality itself began to bend around her fury. Part 5. The new alliance. Lyra's scream shattered more than just the silence in the landing bay. It shattered the laws of physics themselves. The void steel walls that were supposed to absorb energy began to glow white-hot. The Korthak soldiers' weapons simply stopped working. Their energy cells drained in an instant. Even Warlord Greztok stumbled backward as his dark energy sword flickered and died. But Lyra wasn't done. Her wings spread wider than should have been possible, now showing patterns that looked like entire galaxies spinning in fast motion. The battle song pouring from her throat wasn't just sound anymore. It was pure creation and destruction woven together. Impossible, Greztok snarled, dropping his useless weapon. The void steel should contain any energy attack. You don't understand, Keeper Zelthek said, his ancient voice filled with awe and terror. She's not just manipulating energy anymore. She's rewriting the fundamental rules of how energy works. Lyra knelt beside Jake's still body, her hands glowing with power that made the air around them ripple like water. But instead of trying to heal him, she did something that shocked everyone watching. She reached into the quantum field that connected all living things and grabbed hold of Jake's life force just as it was slipping away. No, she whispered, her voice echoing with harmonics that shouldn't exist. You don't get to leave me. Not after teaching me what we could become together. Jake's eyes snapped open, but they weren't quite the same anymore. They now held flecks of the same swirling colors that danced in Lyra's wings. Did you really think I'd stay dead? He asked, sitting up with a grin. I'm too stubborn for that. What happened next would be talked about in legends for thousands of years. Jake and Lyra stood up together, their hands clasped, their connection now so complete that it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. When they spoke, their voices harmonized perfectly. Warlord Greztok, they said together, you came here to conquer a peaceful world, but you woke up something that hasn't existed for a millennium. Greztok backed away, his scarred face showing fear for the first time in centuries. What are you? We are what happens when human courage meets Zephyrian power, Jake said, his voice carrying notes of Lyra's musical tones. We are what happens when someone is willing to die for love, Lyra added, her voice carrying the steel of human determination. The Korthak soldiers raised their weapons, but it didn't matter. Jake and Lyra moved like they were dancing, and every step they took created ripples in reality itself. Weapons jammed, armor fell apart. The artificial gravity in the ship started fluctuating wildly, but they weren't killing anyone. You could destroy us all, Greztok realized. Why don't you? Because destruction is easy, Jake replied. Any fool with a big enough weapon can destroy things. Creation is harder. And we choose to be builders, not destroyers, Lyra continued. Together, they raised their joined hands, and their combined battle song reached every corner of the massive ship. But instead of tearing it apart, the song began to change things. Weapon systems shut down peacefully. Life support improved. Even the harsh lighting became softer and more natural. More importantly, The song reached beyond the ship. Throughout the Korthak fleet, something unprecedented began to happen. The savage alien warriors started to remember things they had forgotten, feelings they had suppressed, the parts of themselves they had buried under centuries of violence and conquest. Some of them began to cry. Others put down their weapons and refused to fight. A few even began to sing along with the battle song, their harsh voices adding new harmonies to the melody of peace. "What are you doing to my warriors?" Greztok demanded. "We're reminding them who they used to be," Jake said gently. "Before the endless wars, before they forgot that there were other ways to live." "Your people weren't always destroyers," Lyra added. "Just like mine weren't always pacifists. Everyone can change. Everyone can choose to be better." Greztok stared at them for a long moment. Around the landing bay, his soldiers were laying down their weapons and looking at their hands as if seeing them clearly for the first time in years. "You offer mercy to those who came to kill you?" the warlord asked. "We offer hope to those who have forgotten what it looks like," Jake and Lyra replied together. The great warlord was silent for nearly a minute. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, smaller, more human. "I have conquered 51 worlds," he said quietly. "I have killed millions. I have forgotten the names of everyone I ever loved. How do I come back from that?" "One choice at a time," Jake said, "the same way everyone does." Lyra stepped forward, and to everyone's shock, offered her hand to the massive alien warlord. "The first choice is whether you want to try." Greztok looked at her small, crystal-like hand for what felt like an eternity. Around them, the battle song continued to play, and Jake could feel it spreading across the entire planet. Korthak ships were powering down their weapons. Zephyrian cities were beginning to rebuild themselves. Even the human marines trapped in the command center were emerging to find their enemies laying down arms. Finally, slowly, Greztok reached out and took Lyra's hand. The moment their skin touched, light exploded through the ship. Not the harsh light of weapons, but the warm glow of possibility. The warlord's scarred features softened as decades of suppressed emotions flooded back into him. "I remember," he whispered. "I remember why we started fighting in the first place, to protect our young ones from the dark between stars. When did we become the thing we feared?" "It doesn't matter when you lost your way," Jake said. "What matters is that you can find it again." The transformation didn't happen overnight. It took months of careful work, with Jake and Lyra serving as bridges between the former enemies. The Korthak warriors had to learn how to live without constant violence. The Zephyrians had to remember that sometimes fighting was necessary to protect what mattered. But slowly, something beautiful began to emerge. The Korthak's knowledge of warfare, combined with Zephyrian energy manipulation and human adaptability, created the most powerful peacekeeping force the galaxy had ever seen. They called themselves the Guardian Alliance, and their mission was simple: protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Jake and Lyra became the first resonance pairs, beings from different species who had formed such deep connections that they could share abilities and consciousness. Soon, young volunteers from dozens of worlds were coming to learn how to form similar bonds. The training academy was built on Zephyr Prime, in the ruins of the old amphitheater where Jake had first saved Lyra's life. It was a place where former enemies learned to work together, where different species discovered they were stronger united than divided. Greztok, no longer a warlord but now a teacher, often told new students about the day a human marine taught him that true strength came not from the ability to destroy, but from the courage to sacrifice everything for others. "The boy died for a girl he barely knew," the former warlord would say. "And in doing so, he saved not just her world, but mine as well. He reminded us all that love is stronger than fear, hope is stronger than despair, and that sometimes the greatest victory is helping your enemy remember how to be your friend." Years later, when Jake and Lyra had become legends across the galaxy, people would ask them what the secret was. How had they managed to turn the fiercest warriors in space into protectors of peace? Their answer was always the same: "We didn't change them. We just reminded them who they really were underneath all the pain and anger. Everyone has a choice between love and fear, between building and destroying. Humans figured out long ago that love is harder, but it's also stronger, and sometimes all it takes is one person willing to risk everything to show others that there's a better way. The Guardian Alliance grew to protect thousands of worlds. Former Korthok destroyers became the galaxy's greatest defenders. Peaceful Zephyrians learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stand up and fight for those who can't fight for themselves. And at the center of it all were a human marine and an alien girl who had discovered that the greatest power in the universe wasn't the ability to destroy your enemies. It was the ability to help them remember how to be your friends. In the end, Jake's risk had been worth everything. He had saved not just one life, but entire civilizations. And the girl he had died for had become the partner who helped him reshape the galaxy itself. Some risks, it turned out, were worth taking.